It's been 7 days. 7 days of complete, deafening silence. You think you're the one suffering, counting every minute, questioning everything, fighting the urge to reach out and explain, to reconnect, to just feel like you're not invisible. But what if I told you that on the other side of this silence, a war has just begun? A war not against you, but against themselves. You think they're fine. You think they're unbothered, living their life without a single thought of you. But you don't see it. You don't see what's happening behind their screen. Because this isn't just a week. This is the stage where their greatest defense, their ego, starts to betray them. That ego that gave them the confidence to walk away, to ignore you, to think you'd always be there. That ego that said, "They'll break before I do." But now, that same ego is starting to whisper doubts, to question decisions, to revisit memories. And by day 7, the first crack appears. Not because you begged, not because you chased, but because you didn't. Because in your silence, they feel what they never expected. Your absence. Stay with me. And I will show you the exact moment their fortress of pride begins to crumble. The week of ego. The first week of no contact isn't just a test for you. It's a trap for them, a psychological mirror they can't escape. It's not the texts you didn't send or the calls you didn't make. It's the space they now have to finally hear themselves. And here's the truth they'll never say out loud. They expected you to fold. They thought by day 2, you'd panic. By day 4, you'd beg. And by day 5, you'd be typing out an apology for a mistake you never made. But instead, you did something far more dangerous. You did nothing. You chose silence. And in that silence, their armor begins to rust. Because the ego doesn't survive in silence. It thrives on attention, control, validation. And now, on day 7, the silence is so loud, it's impossible to ignore. This isn't just a waiting game. This is the week of ego. The week where they thought they'd move on easily, but instead find themselves haunted by what they tried to suppress. And it happens day by day, thought by thought, until finally the weight of their pride starts to collapse under its own lies. Let's break down what's happening inside them, one day at a time. Day 1. The ego celebrates. On day 1, their ego is still loud, proud, and undefeated. They wake up feeling powerful, justified, maybe even a little smug. In their mind, walking away wasn't a loss, it was a move. They might tell themselves you'll be back. They expect your name to pop up on their screen, your words to chase them like they've been chased before, because that's what they're used to, being the one who controls the distance, the timing, the attention. Day 1 is when their ego wears a crown made of arrogance. They'll miss me, it says. They'll break first. That's the voice they listen to because it's comforting. It protects them from the discomfort of doubt. And if you think they're missing you on day 1, think again. What they're experiencing isn't heartbreak, it's reinforcement. Reinforcement of the narrative they've told themselves to feel better about leaving. I needed space. They were too emotional. They'll realize I was right. But beneath all that confidence is something fragile, expectation. They expect you to reach out. And when you don't, it's not pain they feel. It's confusion, subtle and silent. It's not loud enough yet to challenge their pride, but it plants the seed. That seed says, "Why haven't they texted yet?" And while the ego is still winning, a tiny part of their subconscious begins to feel something unfamiliar, uncertainty. But they don't act on it. Not yet. They distract themselves with friends, social media, anything to fill the silence. And if you're watching their stories, they notice. If you're liking their posts, they notice. And if you're still reacting emotionally, they take that as proof. Proof that they're still in control. But here's where your silence becomes powerful. If you resist the urge to check in, to remind them you care, to send that "hope you're okay" message, you steal their first weapon, validation. Day one is where the battle begins. But they don't even know it's a war yet, because their ego is dancing in a room that's slowly starting to shrink. It won't collapse today, but the space is tightening. And you've just started building the pressure without lifting a single finger. That's the magic of no contact. You don't fight, you don't chase, you just remove your energy. And in doing so, you remove their illusion of control. Day one is theirs. Let them have it. Because day two is coming. And with it comes the first whisper of discomfort that no story, no excuse, no ego can quiet. Day two, the silence grows louder. Day two is not what they expected. Yesterday their ego was still in control, still high on pride, still convinced that this silence would break you before it ever touched them. But today, something feels different. The air feels heavier. The silence, what they thought would feel like power, suddenly begins to feel like absence. Not yours, theirs. They start to realize that the spotlight they believed would stay on them has moved. You haven't reached out. You haven't begged. You haven't even left a trace. And the ego, it doesn't know what to do with that. Because the ego feeds on reaction, on attention, on evidence that it still matters. But your silence gives it nothing. And for the first time, that silence starts to echo. They scroll through their phone expecting to see something from you. They check your story out of curiosity, but there's nothing there. They open your last chat thread, maybe even hover their thumb over your name, thinking about sending something casual, but their pride pulls it back. They'll break first, it whispers again. But the whisper's weaker now, because day two isn't about control, it's about confusion. They start replaying your last conversation in their head, trying to analyze what went wrong, trying to remember if you really meant what you said before they left. Doubt begins to tap on their shoulder. They try to silence it with distraction. Maybe they talk to someone new. Maybe they post something on social media that screams, "I'm fine." But even they know it's fake. Because when you were around, they never had to try so hard. Now, everything they post, everything they say, is an attempt to pretend they don't feel what's starting to creep in, the absence of your energy. This is the moment where the ego starts to feel hunger. Hunger for the power it thought it would still have. And it doesn't. You've gone quiet. That's a language the ego doesn't understand. It can't read silence. It can only react to it. And when there's nothing to feed on, it starts to turn inward. Why haven't they called? Are they already moving on? Was I wrong to leave? These questions don't explode all at once, but they begin, quietly, and that's enough, because now the ego is no longer dancing, it's pacing, and the mind is no longer confident, it's wondering. You haven't said a word, you haven't made a move, but already your absence has more impact than their presence. That's the power of day two. It's not about hurting them, it's about letting your silence deliver the truth, a truth they thought they were immune to. But now it's crawling in, slowly, steadily, and tomorrow it's going to grow teeth. Day three, the weight of your absence. Day three is when they start to feel it, not just notice it, but feel it. The silence is no longer an empty space. It's a mirror they can't escape, reflecting everything they tried to bury beneath their pride. They wake up expecting to feel free, light, untouched. But there's a heaviness in their chest they can't explain. It's not love. It's not longing. It's a storm of doubt and discomfort. Why haven't you said anything? Why are you still quiet? They were so sure you'd reach out by now, so sure that your heart would override your strength. But now, 3 days in, they're beginning to realize they underestimated you. You weren't bluffing. You weren't playing a game. You meant it. And that shakes them, because people with fragile egos don't expect you to hold your ground. They expect you to fold. But you didn't. And now the silence they thought would punish you is beginning to punish them. They hear your absence in every scroll through social media, in every late-night moment when they think about reaching out, but their ego still won't let them. You see, day 3 is the day your silence starts speaking louder than any argument ever could. It's the day they begin to feel replaced, even if you haven't moved on. It's the day they feel like they're losing something, but they're too proud to admit it. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injustice." That's exactly what you're doing. You're rising above, not through retaliation, but through removal. You're not explaining yourself. You're not begging for understanding. You're not seeking closure from the same hands that broke you. You've gone silent, and that silence is beginning to make noise in their soul. They won't tell anyone. They'll pretend they're fine. They'll laugh louder, post more, even flirt a little harder. But all of it is a distraction, because deep down, they feel the shift. The one thing they were counting on, your reaction, isn't coming. That's what makes day 3 so dangerous. The ego thrives on certainty, but you've shattered that. And now it's beginning to unravel, slowly, quietly. They're losing their grip, not because you attacked them, but because you stopped giving them power. You let go. And now the silence is eating away at the story they told themselves. This isn't indifference, this is strength, and it's starting to show. By day 3, your silence isn't just noticed, it's remembered. And that memory, it's starting to sting. Day 4, the narrative starts to fall apart. Day 4 is when the story they've been telling themselves begins to collapse. The story that said you were desperate. The story that painted them as the one in control. The story that justified walking away like it meant nothing. But silence has a way of pulling the truth to the surface. They told themselves they didn't care, but if that were true, they wouldn't be checking their phone every hour hoping to see your name. They wouldn't be asking friends if you've said anything. They wouldn't be trying to convince themselves that your silence is just a game. Because by day 4, that silence is no longer just confusing, it's threatening. Threatening to their pride, threatening to their illusion of power, threatening to the version of events they tried to believe. And the longer you stay quiet, the louder their doubts become. What if you're done? What if you're moving on? What if you've realized your worth? That's the fear starting to set in. Not losing you, but losing the version of you that still cared. That's what their ego can't handle. Because their ego wasn't afraid of losing the relationship. It was afraid of losing the control. The ability to come and go, push and pull, leave and return. But now, that door isn't just closed, it's locked. And you're not waiting on the other side anymore. You're building a new life on the other side. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." That's exactly what you're doing. You've stopped trying to change them, fix them, convince them. You've stopped trying to get them to see your worth. and that shift in energy is devastating to someone who was counting on your weakness. Your silence on day 4 starts to trigger something deeper, not just discomfort, but fear. The fear that you've outgrown them, the fear that you're not coming back, the fear that they're not as important as they thought. So, they test you. Maybe they post something to get your attention. Maybe they try to show off. Maybe they even reach out indirectly, but you don't bite. And every time you don't react, the narrative continues to crack. That story that once protected their ego is now turning into a lie they can't hold up. You didn't chase. You didn't beg. You didn't give them what they thought you would. And now the silence they once thought they wanted is suffocating them. Day 4 is the beginning of the unraveling, not of you, but of the illusion they built to feel superior. And for the first time, they're beginning to see it for what it was, a mask, one that's slipping. Day 5. The regret begins to whisper. Day 5 is when the regret starts whispering through the cracks in their ego. Not loud, not obvious, just a quiet voice in the back of their mind that says, maybe I messed up. Up until now, they've fought to defend their decision. They've told themselves they needed space, that you were too much, that they were better off. But by day 5, those reasons no longer feel solid. They feel shaky, shallow, incomplete, because everything they thought would make them feel free hasn't brought peace. It's brought silence. And in that silence, there's no one left to blame. There's just them, sitting with the consequences of what they chose. They start looking at old pictures, rereading messages, replaying moments they swore they forgot. They notice things now that they overlooked before. How much you loved, how deeply you showed up, how much you gave without asking for anything but effort in return. And now that you're not around, that absence cuts deeper. This is the day they start wondering what you're thinking, not because they care more, but because they're scared you might care less. That's the ego cracking. Because the ego survives on the belief that you'll never stop wanting them. But what if you already have? What if you finally realized you were begging for the bare minimum from someone who never saw your value? That's what starts to haunt them. Not your presence, but your growth. Not your silence, but your strength. Marcus Aurelius said, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive." On day 5, you're beginning to rise, and they're beginning to fall. Not publicly, not dramatically, but internally, quietly, slowly. Their pride tells them not to reach out, not to show weakness, but their heart, it's starting to miss you in ways they didn't prepare for. And when they see you still silent, still strong, that missing becomes a mirror. Because you're not waiting, you're evolving, you're not chasing, you're building. And now the question isn't, will you come back? It's, will you even care if I do? That's what their ego can't handle. The idea that the power dynamic has shifted, that you're no longer someone they lost. You're someone they can't reach. And that realization hurts more than they'll ever admit. So they scroll, they stalk, they stay silent, because making the first move would be admitting they lost control. Day 5 isn't the breakdown, it's the warning sign. The moment they first realize they may have lost someone who never really needed them, but who simply loved them. And now that love is gone, not out of anger, but out of evolution. Day 6, the inner conflict begins. Day 6 is when the real war begins, not with you, but within them. For 6 days they've been battling the silence, clinging to their pride, pretending they're unfazed. But now their ego is tired, their confidence is cracking. The script they've been reading from no longer makes sense. The part that once said they'll come back has gone silent. The part that said, "I don't care" now shakes under the weight of doubt. Their inner voice isn't just whispering anymore. It's fighting. One side says, "Stay strong, don't text." The other side says, "What if they've already moved on?" They open your messages again, stare at that blank typing box, type something, delete it, type again, delete again. This isn't control anymore, it's chaos. And it's all happening behind the mask they still wear for the world. To their friends, they smile. To social media, they shine. But inside, they're losing grip. Because your silence hasn't just created space, it's forced them to sit with the consequences of their actions. And that space is filled with everything they don't want to feel. Regret, doubt, longing, shame, and it's starting to overwhelm them. They remember how you loved them, how you were loyal, how you held space for them when they were broken. And now you're nowhere to be found. That love, gone. That safety, gone. That version of you that would have sent a text by now, gone. Epictetus said, "People are not disturbed by things, but by the views they take of them." Day 6 is when their view of you starts to shift. You're no longer the one they thought would wait forever. You're not the backup plan. You're the missed opportunity. And they don't know how to process that. They begin to look for signs. Are you dating someone else? Are you posting again? Are you glowing differently now that they're out of the picture? Even if they don't admit it, the answer scares them, because now they see what they lost, but they don't know how to get it back, and their pride keeps them paralyzed. Every second of silence from you turns up the volume of their inner conflict. It's no longer a game. It's a battle between ego and emotion, between pride and pain, between wanting to reach out and fearing rejection. Day 6 is the build-up, the storm before the crack, the place where everything they thought was power begins to feel like a prison. And in that prison, they sit, watching your silence become the very thing that shatters the story they told themselves. You're not hurting them by doing anything. You're hurting them by doing nothing, because silence isn't empty, it's full of truth, and on day 6, that truth becomes impossible to ignore. Day 7, the crack appears. It's been a full week, 7 days of silence, 7 days of holding your ground, while they told themselves the silence meant nothing. 7 days of you rebuilding yourself quietly while they unraveled in denial. And now it happens. The crack. The ego that once stood so tall, so confident, so sure you'd fold, begins to tremble. Not because of anything dramatic, but because today they feel it, fully, that you're not just silent, you're gone. This is the moment the silence becomes undeniable. They wake up and realize they haven't heard from you again. And the one thing they feared most is now a reality. You didn't break, you didn't chase, you didn't try to fix what they shattered. The version of you who used to send the "I miss you" text on day 2, dead. The version who begged them to stay, buried. All that's left now is your absence, and it's louder than anything you could have said. They scroll back through every message looking for signs. They check your profile, hoping to see something that gives them hope. But instead, they find proof. Proof that you're not waiting. Proof that you've shifted your energy inward. And that shatters them more than any angry text ever could. Their ego, it's screaming, telling them not to reach out, not to show weakness. But their pride is no longer in control. The silence has cut deeper than they expected. And now they're sitting in the middle of their own mess, realizing that you were never the weak one. You were the one with love, with loyalty, with presence. And now that presence is gone. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." And you've embodied that. You didn't argue, you didn't explain, you just removed yourself, And now the silence is speaking the truth their ego tried to block. This is when they draft that text. Maybe it's simple. Hey. Maybe it's desperate. I miss you. Maybe it's masked as casual, just checking in. But you know what it really is. It's the sound of the ego cracking. It's the silence breaking them down. It's the moment they realize they never had control over you. They only had access. And that access has been revoked. On day 7, they feel the cost of taking you for granted. It hits them hard. And here's the power. Whether or not they text you back, whether or not they apologize, you've already won. Not by revenge, not by silence, but by growth. You let them sit in what they created. You let the silence speak louder than pleading ever could. And now they're left with what they ran from, themselves. You didn't need to expose them. Their ego did it for you. What you should and shouldn't be doing during this time. You're not just sitting in silence. You're not frozen in time. You are rising. These 7 days are not about waiting. They are about becoming. Don't waste this time wondering if they're thinking about you. Use this time to remember who you are. Every minute of silence is a decision to choose yourself. Your role is not to stalk their profile. Your role is not to count likes or interpret vague stories. Your role is to reclaim every piece of yourself you gave away. This is the season where you stop negotiating your worth. This is where your healing begins, not by pretending to move on, but by actually doing it. Wake up and do the hard work. Go to the gym, read the books, journal your truth. Sit with your emotions without letting them drag you backwards. You're not running from the pain. You're learning how to face it, hold it, and still move forward. What you should not be doing is breaking your silence just to see if they still care. That's not strength, that's surrender. That's handing your power back to someone who didn't protect it the first time. What you should not be doing is creating fake stories just to get their attention. That's ego-based action. And ego is the exact thing you're trying to rise above. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Let that guide you. You are not trying to win them back. You are not trying to hurt them. You are simply standing in your truth. And that truth is you deserve more than breadcrumbs. You deserve more than confusion. You deserve someone who chooses you clearly, not when you go silent, but because your presence is worthy. During these days you are being watched, maybe not visibly, maybe not directly, but they notice. Your absence is noticed. Your lack of reaction is noticed. And most importantly, your growth is noticed. Don't let temporary emotion cause permanent damage to your self-worth. If you must cry, cry. If you must scream, scream. But don't text, don't chase, don't explain. You're not trying to get them back. You're trying to get yourself back. And that's the most powerful thing you could ever do. The silence you're holding is not empty, it's sacred. It's where transformation begins. This isn't just no contact. This is self-respect in action. This is the quiet revolution of choosing your peace over your past. Your role is to rise. Quietly, strongly, completely. You made it to day 7. And whether they text or not, whether they miss you or not, here's what truly matters. You didn't break. You didn't shrink yourself to fit inside their comfort zone. You didn't run back to what broke you. You stood tall in silence. You stood tall in self-respect. You stood tall in the face of your own pain. And that is power. Let them wonder. Let them doubt. Let them feel the loss of your presence. Because when someone loses a person who brought love, loyalty, and peace into their life, the silence doesn't just sting, it haunts. That's the moment their ego starts to break. But more importantly, it's the moment you start to rise. This week wasn't about punishing them. It was about returning to you. The version of you that's not desperate for validation. The version that doesn't chase people who walk away. The version that knows their worth is not tied to someone else's attention. Marcus Aurelius said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." And this week, you've been rewiring those thoughts. You've been pulling your power back from every place you gave it away. And now you get to choose what kind of life you step into next. Don't go back to what you had to heal from. Don't answer that text just to fill a temporary void. If they want to come back, let them face the silence they created. Let them face the version of you they no longer recognize. The one that doesn't beg, doesn't chase, and doesn't settle. You're not here to prove your worth to anyone. You're here to become so grounded in it that no one's presence or absence can shake you. So, if this silence brought you pain, let that pain push you toward growth, toward peace, toward freedom, because your value was never in being needed. It's in being whole. And if someone only sees your worth when you go silent, they never deserved your voice to begin with. You are not what they left behind. You are what rises in their absence. So if you're still holding on, let go. Not because you hate them, but because you finally love yourself enough to stop waiting. Now, take a deep breath. You've done what most people can't. You stayed silent when your soul was screaming, and from that silence, you've built power, real power, the kind they feel even if they never admit it. Drop this in the comments. I stayed silent. I chose myself. I rise. If this message hit home, subscribe to the channel. This isn't just a video, it's your turning point. It's time to stop surviving and start leading. Leading your healing, leading your journey, leading your life. Silence wasn't the end. It was the beginning. And you, my friend, are just getting started.